know him, you don't know wrestling. This man has held 6 different belts. The only team to win all 3 major belts, the Crockett Cup. This man's a legend in his sport.
How am I not going to like this guy, right? He knows everything.
Now, I want to ask you one question.
Welcome to another edition of Hero Television. I'm your co-host, P.L. Myers, along with Johngy, and our special guest this month, Brandon Santiago of Villa Park's firefighter. Welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I think you still chose the wrong guy to interview, but thanks for having me. This is very nice of you.
Well, the thing is that most people, when we think of heroes, we think of teachers, we think of police officers, we think of firefighters, and I mean it comes with the territory. And for you, when you were growing up, did you know you wanted to be a firefighter?
No, and I always feel guilty. Like I said, there's going to be noise in the background no matter what, but I always feel guilty when people ask me that question, because when I was going through deciding to become a firefighter and everything like that, it was all the guys who I was going to school with in classes to become an EMT, to become a basic firefighter in the fire academy. I've been wanting to be a firefighter my whole life, my father, my uncles, everybody. And it was just something that kind of came along, and I was always, interested. I kind of wanted to join the Army, the military, and then I saw a chance to stay home and to work real hard and get into something interesting. I met a good friend of mine, and his dad and him were doing it. He says, "Why don't you give it a shot?" And I said, "Okay." And then I interviewed and got on as a paid on call, a POC. So I started 18 years ago this month. Do you want me to keep going, or you want to get this going? I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I started out as a POC, which means paid on call, and there was a town that you walked in, you met the chief, and either he liked you or he didn't, and that's pretty much how I got started. And he just said, "All right, I'll give you a shot, and if you don't make this many calls, then you're fired. What you do is you live in a certain area in town, and they give you a pager, and at that time you would go home, and then if a call came in, you had to leave immediately, run out the door, get in your car, drive to the firehouse. If it was an ambulance call, you'd drive the ambulance. If it was an engine call, you'd hop on the engine with a couple other guys, and that was how it was. I did that for 10 years, and then I got more and more involved and took more and more classes and worked a little bit harder, and then I ended up, after that, I became a paramedic. I went as a contract medic. So what that means is you're not a firefighter. You get all the gear and everything. You get to sleep in a firehouse 24-hour shifts, and you just go on ambulance calls. I met and that just opened up a whole new world of 24-hour shifts and doing the additional classes, and I kept working towards that, and I left out a whole thing about becoming a paramedic, which was brutal, and it's one of the worst years of your life, going through the schooling and all that kind of stuff, and the hours and the volunteer hours and all that kind of stuff, and it actually bankrupted me. But then you get to a point where you get your first job, you're still testing everywhere, and then I got a job as a full-time firefighter, and I went to a place, and it was an excellent position, got my foot in the door somewhere else, and then I decided to come here to Villa Park. And I've been here, it'll be 5 years October, and so 18 years total as a firefighter, EMT, paramedic, first responder. So it's just, it's a tumultuous journey. It's all kind of, odds are never in your favor. You're constantly battling against everybody else who wants to get in this job, and all the schooling and prerequisites, and it totally changed from before September 11th. Just for example, I started in 1999, and before September 11th, it was, maybe 30 guys that show up for a job interview, and those guys all wanted to be firemen and their uncles, and they knew what the job entailed. After September 11th, 1,500 people would show up for one job, and you'd end up sitting outside on the sidewalk on a Saturday morning taking a written test, and then the next Saturday, you'd have to go for a physical agility. So it's a Saturday morning. You're not getting paid for any of this, and you'd probably spend 6 hours at a place running a mile and a half, lifting heavy weights, competing with other people, watching other people just screw up one thing and have to go home, and you have to pay to take these tests and pay for applications and go through this, this process. And it weeded out a lot of people, because then you realize that after a while, people realize, wow, this is a really hard job. Man, I'm going to, going through the academy, I'm going to get burned, I'm going to get blisters, A lot of people realize that I have to be on an ambulance, that EMS and emergency medical services and firefighting are one and the same. Then there's, like I would say, water rescue, hazardous materials. There's different groups that you can get into, but no matter what, you have to be, nowadays you have to be a paramedic. And what that did was knocked out probably 1,000 of those, 1,500 people that showed up for a job interview, because I have to deal with blood, I have to deal with people, punching me, kicking me, throwing up on me. I have to, just being there, because a lot of times, there's nothing you could have done. And that's the hardest thing, and a lot of people can't handle that, and they break down and they realize, like, man, I did CPR on that guy for 45 minutes straight. I can't believe, and it really breaks a lot of people. And, sometimes you realize, they go through that. So it's very hard to get into. It's some towns, you're testing at all these different places. So you start the testing process, and one Saturday morning you're taking a written test here, and then maybe you'll make it over to the next town where you have to run 1.5 miles and do all this kind of stuff, and you have to pay all this money to go, and if you miss one part of the test, you're out and you wasted all that time, and you don't even get to apply anymore, and then you end up in some of them just put you in a lottery, and that basically that just says, we'll pick your number and maybe you'll get a chance. And then the cutoff age is 35 years old. So even if you wanted to do this your whole life and you're 35 years old and you're not a fireman yet, now you have to find a whole new profession and start all over again. And a lot of guys get heartbroken, and it's just, it's a very hard journey. It's a different, it used to be, hey guys, this is my nephew's kid. He needs a job. He works here now. Oh, okay. Grab a beer. And then that's now it's completely with prerequisites. Some towns even have to have college degrees, additional college above and beyond EMT and paramedic. Paramedic alone is didactic hours. I can't remember exactly how many nights I was. It was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It was 3 hours class, but I studied for 3 hours before class. And then after class, you did about 3 hours of ER time to get to 500 hours in the emergency room and then 500 hours in the back of an ambulance. So all of that you weren't getting paid for. You're looking at 9 hours a day, if you're lucky, living off, ramen noodles and credit cards and just going, and then even to get into paramedic school was a thing where they're only taking 30 people. So if you applied too late, maybe you should wait another year, and that's another year of your life that completely went by before you got hired or where you wanted to be. So it's not easy getting in it's not easy at all. And a lot of guys finally get hired places and get hired, and then they get guys who, make them eat their dinner on the floor for the first year, and you don't get to hang out with the other guys. You don't get, you're scrubbing toilets all day, and they treat you like dirt, because a lot of them will do that anyway. And sometimes, even if you're a contract medic or a POC or different things, like I said, you don't get any kind of good treatment unless you're a full-time firefighter union, and then even then it could be rough. And a lot of people forget where they came from and how hard it was to get to this point, and they treat the younger guys horrible. And I don't understand. I never understood that. And I try and take people under my wing and, try and, coach people through. And I understand and I know how hard it was. And, some people, you want to help a little more. Some people, real cocky or whatever, and they think they get, okay, well, good luck, but I just know it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
So you touched about the process a little bit. Obviously it's hard. Was there ever a point where you doubted you could do it or felt like quitting? And if so,
all the time.
How did you get through that then?
The anxiety behind it is just, it's crazy. The first couple years, you don't know if you're fitting in with the guys. There's guys who've been doing it so long, and you're, and now you see it after you've been around a while, where the young guys are that anxiety. They're terrified on certain calls, and that they, and you used to be just like that, and you understand it, and then after a while, just something clicks, and you get into a groove, and you just have it under control, and you're confident, and you've done this before, and you've done this a couple times before, and you've seen worse than this, and they don't, but when you're new, you've never done anything like this. I've delivered 9 babies. I don't know how many full arrests I've been on. I've been in fires where, you get the blisters behind your ears, and you're just, and some days you're getting beat up so bad, running different calls and you're just exhausted. There's always the point where you never get to sit down and eat your dinner that you've been making and all that kind of stuff. So, and like I said, a lot of people get frustrated and just, the first time you tried to help somebody and you couldn't, and there was nothing you could have done, and you don't realize that until later. And then there's amazing days where, you were there for somebody and it almost felt like anything before this and anything after this, you were supposed to be right there at that time to help that person, and that's what makes you realize that this is the greatest job you'll ever have. And that was amazing that happened, and I just happened to be there, and you met that person, and you just happen to make that person feel safe and happy on the worst day of their life, because we don't get to be there every time somebody scratches off the $1,000 scratch-off ticket. We don't get to be there when everybody's blowing out their birthday candles. We get there when somebody calls 911. 50% of the time, it's a horrible tragedy, and it's something where you're lucky that you get to help somebody, and that's the best part of the job is once you realize that you can do it. You realize that you're not, this is what you were meant to do. And I don't know how to do anything else. I know I'm not good at sitting behind a desk. That's all I know for sure.
Either way, that's why we're here. For the 18 years you've been doing this, when you first started to become a firefighter and EMT until now, what's the biggest difference that you thought of, or changes that you've seen? Because, you go into this profession thinking one thing, and after 18 years, what was the thing that you're like, wow, I never knew this? Or what's the biggest change that you've seen over the last 18 years?
With the fire service, or with
both.
it changes constantly. There's always that old school way of thinking, and there's guys who've been around for a long time, and I've been around long enough that unfortunately, that old school way of thinking, a lot of people argue with it because you had guys who didn't have to go through any of the prerequisites that we did, and then you have guys who are coming into the fire service who have, associate degrees, bachelor degrees, and stuff like that, and those are two totally different kind of people. And you can have book smart, and you can have, experience. And the guys who are experienced, I've been around long enough that a lot of those guys are gone, and they're retiring, or so you lose some of that, and that's kind of sad because the experience part of it, and those are the people that you knew that I've worked with some of the most amazing people at different departments out of all the chiefs that I've worked for, captains, lieutenants, and there's definitely a handful of people that you knew that if you were working with them, you were going to learn something, and you were going to make it home safe no matter what, because that person would never make a wrong decision. They're incredible people. I can and that's what I, met people, that's what I think of when I think of firefighters, and that was great. But the technology, we're sitting here on the back of an engine that's a year old. When I first started, I had to sit outside of the cab. They didn't have you enclosed. The guys used to ride hanging out of the bar and back, and you'd clip on, and, it was a completely different world with even the air packs that we breathe and everything, and I can show you all that stuff, the helmets, the clothes, the gear, the schooling, the technology as far as emergency medical services. It's all completely, it gets better all the time, and it's amazing, and it's great to be a part of it and see it and remember the old way and how ridiculous that was and how it keeps getting better all the time. And then it's just good to be a part of it. It changes all the time. That's why you constantly have to keep going to classes and re-educating yourself, and all of us have to keep learning. New equipment comes out and we have to learn it. Like we got a new cot. We used to have to just, they used to have to pick up people off the ground. Now we had to pick up people manually. Now we have a new one that can lift 700 pounds with the push of a button.
Wow.
That easily added 5 years to my career because, I just going with the job, and a lot of people who would think about becoming a firefighter, it's just one of those things that beats you up. I never thought of myself as a tough person, but it just along the way you end up with a broken toe, 2 torn Achilles tendons, you get tennis elbow inside and out, you had shoulder surgery, I have 3 herniated discs in my back, but I don't complain. I go to work every day. I love my job. The spontaneity of the job is the best part for me, because you never know where you're going to be at 4 in the afternoon or 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, some people do the same thing day in and day out, and they hate every minute of it. If you can handle the initial anxiety and the shock of it, and you know, the first couple of years sleeping 24 hours at a firehouse, and just, you know, because you always have to sleep with one eye open. You know, you're never able to really get a good night's sleep at work, but if you can get through that, it's definitely worth it. It's an amazing job.
So, did you ever have any really close calls? And then after a close call, like what goes through your mind in the following days?
I don't know. I feel like I've been pretty lucky. I mean, I've hurt myself a couple times, and that, you know, it's nothing that you could have done different. But you try not to, you know, you're constantly watching out for each other. I've been punched. I've been kicked. I've been, you know, spit on. You know, people. You know, I mean, you're dealing with people, and you're dealing with people on the worst day that they've had, and you deal with people who are not really thinking correctly. You know, I mean, whether their house is on fire, or whether they're, you know, intoxicated, or whether their blood sugar's low, or whether they're, you know, they're having a heart attack. Some people just, you know, you're dealing with that person, and you just try and do the best thing you can. Fires, you know, I've always worked in areas where, you know, I don't know. You know, some people, they go to one garage fire and they talk about themselves like they were in the movie Backdraft. You know, I've been in, you know, quite a bit of fires. I never think I've been anything that exciting. You know, 18 years. I know it's weird to say that, but you know, and I've been to some pretty big fires in the area. But I always, you know, the people that I'm with, we trust each other. We don't make those mistakes. I mean, if you get injured, and that's a tragedy, because then you lost somebody who knows what they're doing. You're short one guy in the engine, and that's something where you don't want to do that. You know, we need each other, and that's why we need to look out for each other. You know, it's not just somebody, you don't work with somebody 8 hours a day, and you're kind of fake nice to them, and then you get to go home, and, you know, we live with each other 24 hours a day. So if you don't get along with somebody, you better get over it. And you got to have a mutual respect, and it's great because you get along with people, and you everything, like, you tease each other constantly. We're always playing pranks and joking with each other and everything like that, and we get along very well. But on calls, you know, it has to be very serious, and you know, and especially because, you know, everybody knows somebody, and you have to be out in the general public, and you never want to offend anybody, or, you know, keep joking around to make something come out where, you know, it would just make them uncomfortable. You know, it's professionalism, and it's a lot of people, you know, we try and keep that image. Police officers, firemen, when we show up, it's all eyes on us, and that's another thing. If you're, you know, thinking about doing the career, it's that can be nerve-wracking. You know, everybody's watching everything you're doing. People are filming you with phones and everything like that. So you just do your job and do it well.
When you go to schools and talk to kids, and, you know, people always come up to, you know, after a seminar, they'll go, "Hey, I want to be a firefighter." Mm-hmm. But when you get to everything that you've gone through, what advice do you have for those people that say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to school. This is why I really want to have the same passion that you have." What advice do you give to someone that wants to become a firefighter or EMT?
Don't give up. You know, if you want to do it, do it. If you realize you can't do it, if you can't handle it, then you be happy that you found out now, instead of 20 years or, you know, even 10 years trying to do it, and then you're, you know, it's 35. I used to think, I'm 37, and I used to think people my age were adults, and it sounded very old to me when I first started at 19 years old. I mean, 37 was like ancient, but you know, now if you decide that you can't do this, or you don't want to, you know, like I said, it's past 35 years old, and, you know, you're shot. You don't get a lot of guys. So I have to keep going until I'm 55 at least, before I can retire. So, but it's nice because at home I have a lot of responsibilities too. So this is where you come to get your head straight, because at home I have a lot of kids. So it's nice to, this is where I come to, you know, think straight and focus on work, and that's nice. It's a nice break in the day. So
on a little bit of a lighter topic, we all heard the stories of the firehouse chili, the good cooking. Is that real, you guys?
Oh man, there's some of the best cooks, and that's the one thing, is if you aren't a good cook, well, even if you are, I like to cook because then I don't have to do dishes. but I'm not the best cook. I mean, I've worked with some guys, like I'm working with a guy now, and he makes some of the best Mexican dishes. I mean, it's like restaurant quality food.
We didn't see any of that.
Some guys, some guys are real smart because they're like, when you're new and you start, and they're like, what can you cook? And then you make something so horrible nobody ever asks you to cook again, and then that's nice. Sometimes that's the way to do it, because then all you have to do is eat, and and then you just do dishes, and then you're done. So if you cook, you don't have to clean.
And you got perks because, you're beloved in the neighborhood. I've heard stories about people bringing you cookies and, cakes and all these things to you. So,
No, and that's amazing. People stop by and, bring you treats and cupcakes and cookies and homemade stuff, and people drop off, just to say thank you. And it's really nice. And, even no matter how hard you're trying to eat healthy, somebody stops by with something like that. And on a 24-hour shift, you're like, that was nice. Yeah, I remember that call. I'm not going to eat those cookies. 8 hours later, you're like, well, I'll just have one. 24 hours later, they're gone. So that's just, it's wonderful. And people are so nice. And then, like the grade schoolers and teaching kids and being in the parades, and we teach CPR classes, and it's such interacting with everybody and being there. And that's the best part is. Just being there and but the people reciprocate back. And a lot of people don't know that, though. There's a lot of people that really don't like firemen in public. So, we get a lot of people where we come into work at 7 a.m. A little bit before, but we're out of here and we're putting our gear on the rig and everything like that. Then we do this mandatory thing where we have to stretch, so nobody gets injured. It's, then we come back. We usually have training every morning. You check your rig, you clean it, you wash it, go over all your equipment to make sure that nothing, that has a dead battery or nothing, because sometimes guys went on, 10, 15 calls the day before, something always, so you got to come in with a good cup of coffee and a fresh mind to make sure that nothing's missing, because somebody's life could depend on it. When you need that, it has to be 100%. Then we try and go shopping for food, and the reason I said that is because a lot of people are like, well, we spend all our money, we spend our own money on extra supplies, on everything that's in my locker. I live here 24 hours. We spend our own money on our meals and stuff. And some people just have the misconception that we live off of tax dollars and that everything is, they're paying and we don't. It's all out of my pocket, our pockets collectively. We try and throw $10 in the morning and make miracles out of what we can cook and eat, for $10 a guy, and there's usually $30 or $40 out of 3 or 4 guys, and sometimes you can eat pretty good, or but we try and save a little money, because we know this Sunday I'm working on Easter, you work on Thanksgiving, you work on Christmas Day, somebody calls in sick, and you have to you miss those days, so. It's just one of those things where a lot of people don't understand what we go through, but then there's other people that just completely go out of their way to show you how much you're appreciated, and it's wonderful. It really is.
What kind of schedule do you have? Like, like hourly? Do you work? You said 24 hours straight.
24 hours straight. So I got. You get to work at. I was trying to figure out how to say this on here, but you get to work at 7 in the morning. And then you get off at 7 a.m. the next morning. So you stay here 24 hours. Like I said, 7 a.m., you check all your rigs, you eat lunch, and then after that, more training if you can, and there's a ton of station maintenance. There's, restock, it's just going over everything. We cut all our own grass. We do all our own yard work. We're constantly maintaining rigs and vehicles, even just filling them up with fuel and doing all that kind of stuff. We're always running all over the place. And then if everything goes perfect, you can work out in the afternoon. 6 or 7 o'clock, you get to eat dinner, if you get to eat dinner, and then after that, you can, 9 o'clock or so, 9:30, you can go to bed, try and get whatever sleep you can, and then at 7 a.m., 6 a.m. you get up and we clean the whole fire station. We take out all the garbage, we sweep and mop the floors and everything, and then you get off at 7 a.m. That's if nobody called in sick, and then that's a perfect day with no calls, and if you just get blasted with 10 or 15 calls, it screws, you didn't really get to eat dinner, and then you forgot about it, and then your stomach just learns to eat itself, and then you're just scouring through the kitchen cabinets like a raccoon at the end of the night, but, your schedule is, but the way I look at it is every day is a Friday, because I have one day on and then I have 2 days off. So I worked yesterday 24 hours and I'm off today, and then I get to sleep at home tonight. Tomorrow, you know, I'm home all day, and then I get to sleep at home tomorrow night, and then I come back. So it's every day's a Friday, you know, and that's the best part. I don't want to work any other schedule. I couldn't imagine working 5 days a week, 8 hours. So I did that. No thanks.
When you think of all the success that you've had over 18 years, what are your goals for the next few years?
Every few years, I realize what an idiot I was a few years ago, and and that means I must be getting older, because my mentality is completely different than when I was 19 years old and first started. You know, now I'm married and I have 4 kids, and just a world of responsibility. But it just makes you, you know, take the job more seriously. My goals are. Well, it's just to constantly be better than I was the day before, and I don't try and be better than anybody else. I just try and be better than I was, you know, a few years ago, and learn more. And you know, there's lieutenant's exams, and there's different. You know, I'm on the hazardous materials team and stuff like that now. So whatever education I can get, whatever I can do to make myself healthier and not only be healthy enough where I'm not going to get injured on the job, but to be around for my kids longer. And that's something that, you know, just kind of slips away if you don't take it seriously. And if you miss up on that, you know, then you end up, your back is sore. You know, it hurts anyway, but, you know, it's just one of those things where you can't do that to yourself, you know. So.
Okay. We'll be right back with more of Hero Television with firefighter Brandon Santiago.
Hi, everybody. This is Tony Ocean, and you're watching Hero TV, where everybody's a hero.
Welcome back to Hero Television. I'm your co-host, P.L. Myers, along with Johngy, and we're here with firefighter from Villa Park, Brandon Santiago. We've been spending this month talking to him, part 1 here at the firehouse. And part 2 is going to be more, I think that, I don't know what's more hectic, being a firefighter or being a husband with 4 children, and 3 of them are triplets.
Yes, my wife, we're going to be married 8 years this year. We've been together 16 years. And we have a 4-year-old son named Liam, and then we had triplets 16 months ago, Finn, Kyle, and Ava. So they're 16 months old. Everybody's running around. Everybody has teeth. Everybody's crazy. My wife and I, before we had the babies, we were careless and free. She was working, and then we traveled to over 30 different countries. We were always backpacking around Europe. We were always going all over the place. And now our biggest vacation is we went to Minneapolis this year, and it was wonderful. But
I think John's lucky to get to Naperville, and I'm lucky to get to Lombard.
Yeah, I got that little park once.
Little park once. Well, thank you very much for letting us come by the station and learning the aspects about being a firefighter. And now we'll be going to part 2. To see the other part of your life, and we definitely appreciate letting us stop by. And
thank you for having me. It was very nice. I'm very honored to even. I don't really. There's way better people you could have interviewed.
Well, the thing is that what you do is a thankless job that people fail to realize, that you guys are running towards the fire while the rest of us are running away from the fire. And what you do is commendable. That's why, as I said, Hero Television, there are people that are not just the heroes that you see on television. You know, people think of Michael Jordan and other people like that, but the day-to-day heroes that we count on and we can talk to and be role models and influences. So thank you very much. So stay tuned next month for part 2 of Brandon Santiago as of seeing his everything that goes on. So we'll see you next time here on Hero Television.